Okay, so we'll make a start. I think everyone's out enjoying the sunshine at the moment, which as numbers have dwindled slightly, but we'll begin anyway. Let me just set that down. Okay, so we will be looking at what the funding is, how it's allocated, the rules around the funding, the 5 key indicators you have to report against, any no-nos for the funding, how to report on it, looking ahead as to what we think the funding might look like in the future, and then there'll be time for some questions at the end. Okay, so this will be a whistle-stop tour of the funding. So what is the PE and sport premium funding? So it began in 2013 following the 2012 Olympics in London, and the aim was to create a legacy from the Games across all primary schools to improve the quality of PE, school sport and physical activity in the settings. The funding was actually initially only meant to be for 2 years, but it's still going strong, just about. There are strict rules and guidance for the spending of the funding, which we will cover a bit later on. So how is it allocated? The funding is received based on the number of pupils in years 1 to 6 in each school. So schools with 16 or fewer pupils receive £1,000 per pupil, and schools with 17 or more pupils receive £16,000 and an additional £10 per pupil. So some of the larger schools end up receiving quite a lot in terms of funding, and then even some quite small schools compared to the number of children in their register can receive quite a large sum. Funding is received over 2 dates, so one is in autumn and one is in spring. Usually the funding cannot be carried over from one year to the next, but as with everything else, COVID has turned that on its head. So the funding from last year was initially carried over until the end of March this year, but it was announced a few weeks ago that actually you've got till the end of this academic year to spend last year's funding and this year's funding, so it's just slightly different how it normally is. So the rules, the money is ring-fenced and must only be spent in line with the strict guidance and targets for which it was created. There are 5 key indicators to report against, and schools must use the funding to make additional and sustainable improvements to the quality of their physical education, school sport and physical activity provision. So the idea of it being additional is that it doesn't fund your usual PE sessions. So your usual PE sessions have to be funded from whatever your normal stream of income is. Everything else on top of that can be taken from your sport premium funding. So what are the 5 key indicators? The first one is engagement in all pupils in regular physical activity. The second one is the profile of PE and sport is raised across the school as a tool for whole school improvement. Number 3, increased confidence, knowledge and skills of all staff in teaching PE and sport. Number 4, broader experience of a range of sports and activities offered to all pupils. And number 5, increased participation in competitive sport. So what we'll do now is we will have a look at each key indicator in turn. If you can think of anything that you do in your school that you think is great, or that you've got a bit of a question around some of the options that I've given, just let me know. We can have a little bit of a chat. There's not many of us, so we can easily have a conversation around it. So key indicator number 1 is engagement of all pupils in regular physical activity. So basically, what are you doing to make sure every child is active every day? Some examples of this are the Active Mile, Wake Up Shake Up schemes, Change for Life clubs, making sure that it's every single pupil. So you might have 10% of your pupils are really inactive. So to make sure that they're taking part in regular physical activity, you've offered them this Change for Life programme. Oh, just let somebody in. There we go. Targeted interventions. Again, this might be you've worked out that some of your children, say you've got a group of girls in year 5 who just have no real interest in physical activity. You might do a targeted intervention with them at lunchtime, focusing on something that they're really interested in to make sure that they're still getting their regular physical activity. And anything you do at your lunchtimes or your playtimes as well. So it could be lunchtime clubs, it could be equipment that you use to engage the children outside in their lunchtimes. it kind of is up to you as to how you think you're targeting all your pupils. Key indicator number 2, the profile of PE and sport is raised across the school as a tool for whole school improvement. So again, the basic question for that is, what are you doing to show that PE, school sport and physical activity is important in your school? How are you raising that profile? So it could be as simple as displays. You might have a display, say, in your dinner hall showing what you're doing in PE and in competitions to inspire other children to be part of it. You might be offering enrichment days, such as getting in local football clubs, or some unusual sports where you might be having someone come in to deliver fencing or squash to inspire children to try new things. Sports council, so that's a group of children from a variety of year groups working together to try to raise the profile of PE and sport across the school. So you might have conversations about how they want to see their PE sessions improve. You might have conversations about after school clubs or extracurricular provision. You might even use them to help you work out what equipment's needed or to sort out the cupboard, to do a bit of an audit, and anything with the sports council to help raise that profile. And then playground leaders is really good as well. Having the children outside at the lunchtime and a playtime leading the sessions themselves. They're being used as role models, and it helps improve behaviour and engagement at lunchtimes. Number 3, increase confidence, knowledge and skills of all staff in teaching PE and sport. So how are your staff being supported and upskilled in the subject? This is talked about a lot, especially on social media. It's quite a tricky one, especially if you've got some reluctant staff. Some of the most common ways of doing it are through CPD schemes. CPD training. You might do twilights, you might do days away where they get coaching qualifications and all those kind of things. Mentor schemes, so that's where a sports coach or a PE specialist comes in and works alongside teachers whilst delivering to help them feel more confident and upskilled. And also there's lots of online PE resources and planning programs that schools buy into to help them deliver, so that it's kind of taking away the onus of planning from the teachers and they're just having to do the delivery. Number 4, broader experience of a range of sports and activities offered to all pupils. So what sports are your pupils being exposed to? This can be through specialist coaching. For example, I knew when I was teaching PE that football wasn't one of my strengths at all. So I made sure that I got somebody in to deliver that with the children at least once a year, just so that they were exposed to it and they understood the rules and the expectations, and that led into extracurricular clubs because I knew I couldn't provide that. Extracurricular clubs, that can be all your typical sports, possibly linking to your school games competition calendar, or you might be offering different sports that are more linked to local clubs. For example, you might have a badminton club around the corner that the children can easily access, so you put on an extracurricular club at school of covering badminton, so the children are inspired to go and try it in their own time. Purchase of equipment fits into this. You can't deliver decent PE or school sport unless you've got decent equipment. And then again, enrichment days and activities, as mentioned before, are really good for exposing children to sports that they might not otherwise have a chance to try. The final key indicator is increased participation in competitive sport. So are your pupils taking part in both intra and inter-school competitions? So you can include competitions that are taking place inside your school. So you might, if you've got a large school where you've got 2 or 3 classes in one year group, they might be playing against each other, or you might be going and playing other schools. Examples of how you can allocate your spending to this key indicator is through any transport costs. If you're hosting any competitions, any costs that might incur, any kits that you need to purchase, and again, any equipment that you might need. Anything like that comes under competitive sport because you need it all to be successful. No-nos. So the PE and sport premium funding cannot be used to employ coaches or specialist teachers to cover PPA. So anything that requires covering another teacher or covering PPA time is not allowed, which is why the mentoring schemes are really popular at the moment, because the teacher is working alongside the coach. Schools can have PPA cover through sport or through PE, but the money, the way it's funded, can't be taken from this funding. You cannot use the funding to teach the minimum requirements of the national curriculum. So the national curriculum for PE, that needs to be covered regardless as to whether you've got any of this funding or not. The only exception to that is if you need to top up your swimming. So if you've got 3 or 4 children that haven't achieved the 25 metres or the variety of strokes, then you can use this funding to help take them along for extra sessions. You can't use the funding to fund capital expenditure, so that's land or buildings. So you can't say, right, I want a brand new sports hall, so we're going to save up all the sport premium funding for the next 5 years, or the last 5 years, sorry, and purchase or build a new sports hall. That's not allowed. And again, similar thing, you can't pay for one huge expenditure and nothing else. So some schools have been tempted to use all the funding to put in a track. That's fine if it's only part of your funding. But if you're using the whole amount to pay for that, then it's not allowed, because obviously you've got 5 key indicators to report against. You can't report against all of them if you're only spending it on one thing. So have a think. Do you spend your funding correctly, matching all 5 key indicators? It would be good if we could have a bit of input on this, if people are thinking, oh, we're really good at this, but not so good at that. I know when I was delivering that we really struggled with upskilling the staff. That was something that I always struggled with the sport premium funding. Anyone else got something that they struggle with or that they think they're particularly good at? There's not many of us, be brave.
I same as you really. I only took on PE sort of just before we went into all this pandemic.
Oh wow.
And things. So I've been doing it for like a year and a half, say. I can't remember exactly, but something since like the September, not this year, the year before.
Okay.
So for me, it's like when I was just sort of getting my head around it all, and then we went into lockdown, and I feel like I can't do a lot of the things that I want to do because we can't cross bubbles. I can't go and like spend time with other teachers and things, doing sort of that upskilling and seeing, getting other people in to help them and things. But for me, it's very much similar to you. It's like, I know teachers will just say like, oh, I hate teaching PE. And it's like, well, you have to, for one. Yeah. And it annoys me, like the attitude of it annoys me, because if they hate it, then it comes across to the children. So I want to do something to help them enjoy it more, type of thing. But just because of the amount of time I've been doing it, I haven't been able to.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I think when I've spoken to teachers that are reluctant to deliver it, I think they need to be experts in every sport. Yeah. I think they need to know the ins and outs of all the cricket rules that have ever existed, and they don't realise that actually it's very similar to teaching any other subject, is that you start from the basics and build up. So I think things like the mentoring schemes, even if you did that internally, so you worked with them, would work really well. Yeah. But as you said, COVID is affecting everything at the moment, and I think that's why the government said you could roll the funding over and then roll it over for another term, because I think they're just aware as well that we just can't spend it the way that we usually would, because we're so restricted in what we can and can't do in schools at the moment. Yeah. Anybody else got anything they'd like to say about how they spend their funding? No, that's fine. So, reporting on it. You must complete an impact report by the end of July every year. It must be published on your school website. This is an Ofsted requirement. Not many schools realise that. Ofsted will check to see if your sport premium report is on your website. It must state the full amount of funding you received, even if you didn't spend it all. So I know that when I was teaching, quite often we didn't get the chance to spend it all, because we just had so much stuff already, but still put it all on, all the amount that you received, even if you didn't manage to spend it all. It feeds forward to the government as to what's needed and what's not. It must include information on swimming, which we will come to. It must show the sustainability, there's that word again, of your decisions and what the next steps will be. And you can include free things as well. So if you have got a PE specialist delivering in your school, you obviously, if they're covering PPA, you can't take the funding from the sport premium, the PE and sport premium funding, that's fine. But if they are doing anything free within it, so if they deliver an after school club, or if they've got families involved with anything, you can include that as well. Even things like the displays and things like that don't really cost any money, put those in. So a little bit on swimming. You must report on your current Year 6 pupils' ability to confidently and competently swim 25 metres, to use a range of strokes effectively, and to perform self-rescue in different situations. Use the data you have from when those children went swimming, even if it hasn't been in this academic year. So I know in the Northwest particularly, it's quite common for Year 4s to go swimming. So by the time they're in Year 6, they've not actually swum for 2 years, but you need to look back at what their ability was when they were in Year 4. There's quite a lot of different things. So I know in Manchester there's something called Swimphony, which is really good for looking back on it. They keep all the data for you. Otherwise, if you know you haven't got anything like that to keep it for you, make sure you keep a note of it somewhere, keep an Excel spreadsheet somewhere ready for when you need to report on it. I know that's a bit late if you've not done that already this year, but as we said, everything's a bit different this year anyway. So reporting on it. This is the Association for PE template. So you have to, as I said, put in the total funding allocated, and then you have to report on the intent, implementation and impact of every decision and every penny spent. You must also report on the sustainability and next steps of this decision and what you'll do with it going forward. Basically, you're justifying your reasons for everything you've spent. So here's a bit of an example. So if we're looking at key indicator 1, which is the engagement of all pupils in regular physical activity, the intent is to improve the fitness of lower key stage 2 pupils following CHAMP results. The way you are implementing that is with a Change for Life lunchtime club in Spring 2. The amount of money that it's costing you out of your funding is £150. And you will know that you have had an impact. The evidence of the impact will be improved results in the summer CHAMP measurements. Then you need to think about how that's the sustainability of that and what the next steps will be. So feeding into the next term or the next year. So the idea is that the pupils still stay healthier in the long run because of this intervention, and that actually the school's going to set up their own Change for Life club run by the PE lead. So not only are the pupils healthier, but actually you've upskilled a member of staff as well to take the club on. Some top tips for reporting. Actually, we'll go back one. Has anyone got any questions just about how to report effectively using that template? Because I know that's just a very simple example. No, that's fine. So some top tips for reporting. Keep a list throughout the year of everything you have spent or you have done. So if you've not done that already, you've still got a term left. Go away and have a think about what you've done for the last 2 terms. Imagine the lists for this year will be nothing like they've ever been any other year before because of COVID. Double and triple check your numbers. Make sure they add up. Don't start reporting. You can overspend. That's fine, but make sure you're deliberately overspending. This one's really, really important. Look back at last year's report to see if you have implemented everything you said you would. So if we have a look back here, in your previous year's report, where you've got your impact and your sustainability and next steps, make sure you look at those and think, right, so if in the previous academic year you've said we're going to set up our own Change for Life club run by the PE lead, have you done that? And if you've not done that, why have you not done that? Because the idea is that the sustainability and the legacy left from one year to the next carries over. So it's actually also a really good way of looking back and thinking, oh, I need to do that this year in case you've forgotten. Check that everything has proven sustainability. So have a think about, have I got evidence to show that this will continue in the next few years? Have I got evidence to show that the children will have learned something long lasting from this? My favourite one, show off everything you've done. That's why you should include free stuff. Anything that you've done that's not cost anything, everything you've done that has cost something, show off everything amazing that you do. A lot of the time, the rest of the staff in school won't realise everything that's done in terms of PE, school sport and physical activity. So if you can really, really show off about it in your report, actually it's great for them to see what's done in school as well. And we actually have a full example report that I created where I've filled in for every single KI, for all the information for swimming. So we will send you a link for that as well so that you can have a look at it if you're not sure, especially if you're new to the role. That can be really helpful. It's really, really comprehensive. You don't have to go into as much detail as I've done, but it's always good if you can. So looking ahead, it is likely that the funding as we know it will stop either this year or next, but we are confident that there will still be funding under a different name with different guidance, possibly with a heavier focus on well-being. We think this is really positive for our profession and could lead to some great new innovations. And I think a lot of people in the field would agree that well-being is really, really tied into physical activity. And I think it will be a great partnership if the funding is designed that way. Usually they are very, very late at renewing or promoting or even releasing the funding or letting us know what it's called or where it's coming from. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll find out what's happening for the next year at least. If this is the last year of funding, then use it wisely. Make sure everything you do will have a long-lasting impact. If this is the last time you're going to get any funding, make sure that the legacy is there for years to come. And a good way of checking the sustainability of an expenditure is to ask yourself, will this still be useful in 5 years' time? So some things are an instant win and some things you need them immediately, and that's fine. But for most of the things that you're doing, think, right, if I look back in 5 years, will this still have a use? Will this still be being used? Will this still be being talked about? And that's a really good way of checking in with yourself every time you're doing that last sustainability column in your report. So in conclusion, the funding must be allocated against the 5 key indicators. You must report on the impact and the next steps. Sustainability is key. Not sure I've mentioned the word sustainable enough yet. The whole school must benefit. So because the funding is for everyone from year 1 to year 6, then the whole school must be benefiting from it. Be clear in your intentions. Don't do something just for the sake of it. Don't spend money just for the sake of spending it. Think about what you're intending to get out of it. And consider the impact if the funding stops. It will stop at some point. It might change, it might adapt, but it will probably be less. So think about what you can do to make sure it still has an impact. As I said, whistle stop tour. So now there's time for any questions, if anybody's got any questions about the sport premium, the PE and sport premium allocation. Or if you're not sure how to spend against a key indicator or anything like that, I can help. Okay, I think people are just desperate to get outside in the sunshine, and I don't really blame you. So that's it. It's a little bite-sized workshop today, just talking about the PE and sport premium funding. If you would like to ask any questions, then you can email me. The email was sent out. My email was sent out with the link today. And like I said, the example sport premium report we will get over to you. It's available on our website anyway. It is, like I said, it's really, really comprehensive. There's some really in-depth ideas on there. Feel free to poach them all if you wish, but don't worry if yours doesn't look quite like that. It's meant to be the most detailed one you've ever seen. It took me a long time. And if not, thank you very much for attending, and hopefully we'll see you at another workshop soon. The next one is a repeat of one with Helen that we did a few weeks ago because demand was so high. So we're putting the effectively supporting early years physical activity in a post-COVID world on again next Thursday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.